So next is a video from Norway. And why Norway? You may be wondering. So I would like to first talk about the background. So Norway actually is on the northern part of Europe, and actually there was a Chernobyl nuclear accident, and that is the place. Actually, Norway is located in a place where the radioactive fallouts fall, and the distance is quite far, but they were had a significant impact. And there is an indigenous tribe called Sami living in Norway, and they are the reindeer herders traditionally. And this is not just in Norway, but Sami actually is living in the northern part of Eurasian continent, and traditionally they are herding reindeers, and they are utilizing as food, and also they are making crafts using their fur or horns. So that was how they lived traditionally. But the reindeers actually eat lichen, which is a special type of a plant, and actually this fungus, the lichen, actually accumulates the radioactive substance. So the radioactivity tend to accumulate in the reindeers. So the amount of the radiation that was accumulating in radiators was several thousands of becquerel. So it had been quite high for the 10 years. So they were not able to eat the reindeers in such a situation because of the high radioactivity, and they had to take some countermeasures. And the contamination of the reindeers, actually, it is very difficult to reduce. If it is cattle, then of course they can you can choose the feed, but the reindeers you cannot lock them up in the buildings. So the humans have to consider, for example, the timing of the year when they catch the reindeers, and they are trying to control the impact. But there is a significant changes happening in their lifestyle as well. And there is a Sami's local government in Norway, and Ms. Inger Marit Aaren has contributed our presentation to us. So
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for the invitation. I am honored to be able to contribute to this important work. My name is Inger Marit Aaren. I come from the Sami people in the northern part of Europe. I have been invited to share a personal story about how contamination, which threatens life and future generations, has affected my family and our way of living with nature. I am not here as a scientist. I am here as a daughter, as a wife, as member of an indigenous reindeer herding community. I hope that my family's experiences from Chernobyl can speak to some of the experiences you have there in Fukushima. This is a personal story from the Arctic and from Sápmi. In my talk, I will do three things. First, I will briefly introduce you for you who I am and where I come from, the Arctic and the reindeer herding way of life. The second, I will share how the Chernobyl accident in 1986 changed my husband's family and their relationship to nature and food. Third, I will reflect on some questions that I believe we share across continents. What happens to people, to families, and to culture when the land that sustains us becomes dangerous. I share this with deep respect for your experiences there in Fukushima. I am Sami, and I was born and raised in a reindeer herder family in Kautokeino, in the far north of Norway. Kautokeino is a small Sami community in an Arctic environment with long winters and cold climate. In my childhood, my father managed our reindeer herd, and as family we lived very close to the animals and to the nature. Reindeer are not just animals to us, they are a part of our culture, our economy, and our identity. From early age, I learned that nature was our food table. We harvested from nature with respect, and when we slaughtered the reindeer, we used the whole animal, both meat, organs, skin, and bones. Nothing was wasted. Everything was used. In Sami child rearing, an important value is to learn to take care of yourself in nature and use what nature provides us. I was taught when and how to pick berries and plants, how to fish, how to move safely on the land in different seasons. Nature was our teacher, our pantry, and our safety net. This way of thinking, that nature gives us everything we need if we take care of it, is an important part of being Sami. And it is important to understand my reactions later when I discovered how Chernobyl had changed my husband's family's relationship to nature. As adult, I met the man who would become my husband. He is also a reindeer herder, but he comes from the South Sami area, about 1,300 kilometers south of Kautokeino. He was born and raised in Åredacke, in the middle of Sweden. His family has herded reindeer there for generations, just as my family has done in the north. On the paper, our backgrounds looked very similar. In reality, I would soon discover that something important had changed in his family's way of living from the land. We shared the same culture and traditions, but not in practice. When I became a part of his family, I joined their work with the reindeer. Very quickly, I noticed that the way slaughtering processes the reindeers was different from what I had learned as a child. Many parts that I had been taught to use, for example organs, skin and bones, were not used in the same way in my husband's family. For me, that felt almost like breaking a rule of respect towards the animal and towards the nature. So I asked a simple question: why don't use the whole reindeer? The answer to my question brought Chernobyl into our kitchen and our everyday life. My husband's family explained that their way of living had changed after the Chernobyl accident in 1986. Radioactive fallout had contaminated large parts of the grazing lands and the surrounding nature. Suddenly, the same land that had always given them safe food became a potential threat. They could no longer trust that all parts of the reindeer were safe to eat. They could no longer harvest from the nature in the same way as they always had done, as their ancestors, since time immemorial. A disaster that happened far away entered their lives through the lichen on the ground, the water in the lakes, and the bodies of the reindeer. Because of the contamination, my husband's family had to make difficult choices. They had to give factory-produced feed to the reindeer in certain periods. Normally, reindeer live freely outdoors all year round. They are not like ordinary livestock that stay in barns and are fed by humans. They are adapted to feed themselves from the land, from what they find on the tundra, in the forest, and on the mountains. The family also had to change their own diet. They had to stop fishing in lakes that had been used for generations. They become afraid of picking wild berries and other plants. Mushrooms, which could accumulate radioactivity, were avoided for many years and only slowly reintroduced towards the late 1990s in our diet. Every decision about food became a calculation of risk. Is this safe? What will it mean for the children, for our future generations? What they used to harvest and eat with confidence was now classified as dangerous or as waste. Parts of the reindeer and parts of the landscape moved from being life-giving to being suspicious. Yet they could not simply not move away. These were their homeland, their traditional area, and their history. For the Sami people, our mountains, lakes, and forests are not just background sceneries. They are a part of who we are. They are a part of us, and we see them as living beings. So when nature becomes contaminated, it is not only the environment that is damaged, but also identity, dignity, and a sense of belonging. In my husband's family, people did not talk very much about the emotional side of these changes. There were not many big conversations about grief, fear, or anger. Instead, the family went into what I would call survival mode. The main focus became practical. How do we reduce exposure to radioactive fallout? What can we safely eat today? The children's safety became the most important concern. They wanted to make sure that the children were not exposed to the high levels of becquerel in the food. Silence became a kind of survival strategy. By not talking too much about feelings, it was easier to concentrate on everyday decisions. Which meat to keep, which fish to throw away, which berry to avoid. But the emotional and psychological impacts were still there, under the surface. I share this story from Sapmi with deep respect for your experiences in Fukushima. My hope is that you're able to connect with my reflections, and that we can help each other to think about justice, dignity, and safe future for our children. I want to end with some questions that I believe connect my family's experiences in Sápmi with many families' experiences there in Fukushima. What do you do when the land that has always given you life becomes poisonous? How do families cope when ordinary life is no longer safe, even when the landscape looks the same as before? And most of all, how can we protect our children, not only their bodies, but also their sense of home, belonging, and security? How do we honor culture, language, and identity when contamination limits our traditional ways of living? In both Chernobyl-affected areas and there in Fukushima, people have to learn to live with an invisible threat. We had to learn to live a new way of living on our traditional lands. You know very well what it means to ask again and again, is this food safe? Is this water safe? Is this place safe for me and for my children and future generations? My hope is that by sharing these experiences, we can think together about justice, dignity, and safe futures for the generations to come. Thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you again for inviting me to share my life story about Chernobyl and how it affected me and my family and my children. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you
この
very
ノルウェー
much.
の、サーミの方のお話なんですけれども、ノ
The
ルウェー
story
全
of
般では
Sami
なく、サーミの方のお話になります。なぜそういうかという
is
と、
about
この、
Sami people,
原発
not
事故の
about
被
the
害という
entire
のは、
Norway.
必ずしもすべてに平等に
The
ある
damage
わけでは
brought
ないという、
by the nuclear
非常に
accident
分かりやすいお話だと思うんです。
it
そういう
does
のが
not
サーミ
fall
の方
upon
たちのライ
everyone
フスタイルという
equally,
のは、この
as
発
you
表の
could
中で
see. The
インゲルさんが
lifestyle
お話
of
になってたように、 非
Sami
常に自
people,
然
as
と密接な暮らし方をして
Inger-san
るんです
said,
ね。で、これはおそ
is
らく日本
very
だったら
closely linked
アイ
with
ヌ
the
の伝統
nature
的な暮らし
surrounding
方
them.
と同じような
I think
近いものがあるのではな
if
い
you
かと
look
思うん
at
ですけれど
Japan,
も、
we
やっ
have
ぱりやはり
also
そういう自
Ainu
然に密
people.
接と
I
に
think
関わっ
this
て
is
きた
there
人
are
ほど
similarities there.
大きな被害を受ける。で、それは都市型
That
の
those
ライフスタイ
who
ルと
live
はま
with
た
the
大きく異
nature
なる
are
ので、都
affected
市型
more
のライフ
than
スタイル
the
で暮らし
people
ている方
in
には想
urban
像ができ
area.
ない部分であったり
I
するん
think
です
it is
ね。
very difficult
で、そ
for
れはもう
people
文化
who
の
live
一
in
部になってい
cities
るの
to
で、
imagine what it's like to live like
放
that
射能汚染になった
because
時
it's their
が起きた
culture.
後に、
So
文化そ
when
のも
there
の、暮
is
らしそ
a
のものが大きな影
contamination
響を
of
受けるとい
by
うことです。
radiation,
で、
their lifestyle will
こう
be
いうお
hugely
話をす
affected and
ると、
altered.
おそらく都会の生活をしている
When
方
you
にはあまり馴染みがないこ
listen
と
to
を思われ
this
ることが
kind
多
of
いと思うんで
story,
す。とはい
if
え、
you
そ
live
うで
in
はな
city,
く、
you might
こういう問題
find
は
it
長期にわた
difficult
って残ってい
really
る。で、
to
今お話しされているのはチェルノブイリの汚染のお
emphasize.
話なので、
However, I think
1986年な
this
ので、すでに、39年、次の
Chernobyl
来年で
accident took
40
place
年
in
になります。で、
1986, so
40
it's been
年
quite a
経っ
long
ても、
time.
まだなお影響が残っている。
Next year
で、
marks
福
the
島の事
40th
故、約
anniversary.
15年です。
Even
で、
after 40
もう15
years,
年、もう15年
there
と
still is an
こ
impact
う言いますけれども、こ
felt
のチェルノブイリ
on
の
a
事件
day-to-day
なんかを見る
basis.
と、福島で
In
も
case
自
of
然
Fukushima,
と
it's
一
been
緒に暮ら
15
す方
years.
の自然と一緒に暮らすライフスタイルを持っている方というのは、
Both
な
in
お必ず
Chernobyl
長期にわ
and
たって生
Fukushima.
き続けるはずなんですね。
it is true that those who live close to the nature and live with nature will suffer from a prolonged effect. Those with the Tokyo lifestyle find it difficult to understand that, and they would feel this is not very significant. And I think this is a big problem. By bringing this up during this dialogue, I believe that the people with urban lifestyle could feel that there are people, could understand that there are a group of people who would suffer a long term because of this accident. We do have Q&A session time. However, you can't really ask questions to Ingel-san, the Sami person, because it's a videotaped speech. So if you can give us forward your questions, then I will communicate those to her. You can use Q&A function to write your questions, or you can just forward your questions later on.